we've got a guest on, Ronald King. So I'm going to jump straight to point 6 on our agenda, so we can have a discussion and listen to Ronald. At the CEO Forum meeting, the strategic session they had during December, the need was identified that we get somebody in from the outside to come and talk to us a bit, what we see going forward. Lots of times our members ask us and look for wisdom when we have these discussion points. We want to be realistic and be aware of the challenges going forward, but we also need to listen to people from the outside and to make sure that we don't create the echo chamber where we just share those concerns and repeat the concerns that we do have. So Ronald King is the head of public policy and regulatory affairs at PSG. So he's well aware of what's happening in the policy space. Stands a bit further away from agriculture, but most of you will know him presenting on television and also writing in the Landbou Weekblad. So he is in touch with agriculture, but coming a bit from the outside, we can definitely listen to him. Ronald, you can carry on in what language you're comfortable with. We're mixed, and as jy so 'n bietjie jou taal so nou en dan meng, dan gaan ons nie te hard op jou wees nie.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, my Zulu at this stage is not at conversant level, so I'll stay away from that. And I'll try and keep it to broken English, which is the language that we use in self-defense. Willem, just to confirm the time that I have available on your agenda, because I'm a lawyer and we get paid by the minute, so I love talking over my time.
Oh, well, you're talking to people that that some of us get chosen in these positions minutes, and then allowing some time for questions and answers. So the mails I received and Quivers discussed with you, 45-minute discussion and then a couple of questions and answers.
Perfect. Let's share the screen. Apologies there, I take it you cannot see the presentation at this stage.
Ja, ek sal vir jou sê as ons hom sien, daar is hy nou.
Sien hulle net die blou skerm of sien hulle actually
Net die blou skerm, nog nie die voorlegging.
Yes, man. Sorry, let me just quickly stop this presentation. Yeah. Thank you very much. So the talk that or the topic of my talk today is, should we switch off the lights and leave, or are they already off? And I see from your chat box that a couple of your members are actually already not here today because of the fact that we have this massive load shedding. So I think a lot of what I'm going to say today is well known to all of you. Hopefully, as Willem said, just give some different perspective. It's possibly a good time, especially for the first 30 minutes of this talk, to put away any sharp knives, stay away from the cutlery, because you might feel prone to cutting your wrists, because I think if we start looking at many of the current trends, the picture doesn't look that good. Now, I've got a master's in future studies. What does that mean? Well, it means my job is to try and look at the future and try and see what's happening, telling the company, PSG, what is happening, and then more importantly, also trying to influence those trends. So to ensure that whatever happens in the future is actually to the benefit of South Africa and of PSG and of all of our customers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the whole thing about trend analysis, and then about the question of should you emigrate or not. Is it a good time now to move into Zambia and become a tomato farmer in Zambia? Or should we stay focused and stay in South Africa? So when we look at a trend analysis, we need to ask ourselves, what are we currently seeing? And when we do these trend analysis, we basically look at 6 main different trends out there. The first one is political. On the political side, we will look at what is happening, who's in government, who will be in government in a couple of years, what are their policies. The second trend that we look at is the economical side. Of course, a lot of it is interconnected with the political side. We look at what's happening on a social level within the company and the country. We look at technological matters on the legal side. And then the 6th one is environmental. So we call this a pestle analysis, this acronym for these 6 trends. And those are the main trends that we would look at on a regular basis. So let's start off with political. Where are we currently? Now, I think the easy way to summarize where we currently are is we're in a state of dysfunctional corruption. Now, we first and foremost need to realize that corruption is part and parcel of government. We tend to forget how corrupt the previous national party was. I mean, if you were a minister in the previous national party, you would get a farm, and the first thing that you would do is you would tar the road to your farm. Now, the benefit was, of course, that all the farmers on that road got a tar road. So it was not only you that benefited from it. And that's kind of functional corruption. Money is left on the table. The economy as such does not get hurt, but you do get a personal benefit from your position. What is the dysfunctional corruption? Maybe the best way to describe this is by means of a joke. And it's the story about President Zuma going to visit the late President Robert Mugabe. And he gets there and he says to Robert, but you've got a beautiful palace. How did you get this wonderful house of yours? And Robert Mugabe points to a hospital on a hill and he says, do you see that hospital? And Jacob Zuma says, yes, I see it. And he says, well, 20% commission. A couple of years later, President Mugabe comes to visit President Zuma, and he sees Nkandla with the fire pit and the chickens running around, and he says, yeah, Jacob, where did you get Nkandla from? And Jacob says, do you see that hospital there on the hill? And Robert Mugabe says, no. And he says, exactly, 100% commission. And I think that gives a very, very good idea of where we currently are. The amount of money that has been stolen, the level of corruption that we currently have is of such a nature that it has started to break the South African economy. Now, and this is probably going to be an issue that I'm going to address a number of times during today's speech. The one thing that we need to remember is that government cannot be corrupt without private sector being corrupt as well. For every corrupt politician, there's a corrupt businessman as well. So this is not only the politicians that's become extremely corrupt in this country. South African business people have become seriously corrupt. In the farming industry, we're currently sitting with the whole sugar industry that is facing a lot of problems in the KZN because of the way that our big sugar producer was handled. EOH, Steinhoff, just to mention a few of our big names that were really trusted in South Africa, that has become part of this problem. So this is, for all intents and purposes, the biggest issue that we are currently seeing. Now, this also has a few other problems, and the one big problem that we have, of course, is that grey listing is one of the big risks. You might have heard of grey listing, and what that means is that any country that wants to do business with South Africa will have to implement stricter rules when working with finances to ensure that the money that they are paying, or the money that they are receiving, or the contracts that they are making isn't going towards corruption or towards the financing of terrorism. So in the farming industry, that will more than likely have a bit of a problem with the contracts that you have for exporting, the way that you are paid. There will be delays, there will be additional costs, there will be much more scrutiny that we are currently having. Now, it doesn't help that in the past couple of months, a number of fruit exports were found to be half fruit and half drugs being exported. So because of the fact that we've got this dysfunctional corruption, we've got a problem at our ports, that your shipment of grapes gets intercepted at the harbor. Some of the packages gets packed out, and a bit of dagga or a bit of mandrax or whatever is shipped off with your fruit. So I've spoken to a number of farmers who had their deliveries to Europe and to Asia intercepted and confiscated because of the fact that somebody at the ports have tried to smuggle contraband through with it. So that is one of the big problems that we have, the whole dysfunctional corruption. Together with that, of course, the ANC infighting. And one of the big questions that was in our mind in December was Ramaphosa and Phala, the farm gate scandal. Now, he came out of this actually extremely good. Apologies for the lights going off there. President Ramaphosa, and again, this is speculation. We will never get the true discussions that happened, but it would seem that President Ramaphosa made a play here that was exceptionally dangerous, but came off very, very well. He notified the ANC after the Phala report was made public that he was going to resign as president. Now, interestingly enough, the statistics show that if President Ramaphosa isn't the ANC president next year during the elections, they will probably have a election turnout, and they will probably get about 26 to 28% of the votes. With him, it will still be above 40%. So the ANC immediately realized that they couldn't have him resign. And where we were concerned that he might be forced to make sacrifices because of the Phala report, the decision that he made to resign as president forced the hand of the ANC, and they asked him, what should they do to keep him? And I think President Ramaphosa has come out actually within the ANC much stronger than he was before Phala. Phala has, however, also showed us that the president do not always understand the implications of many of the things. I think the whole Phala was managed exceptionally bad by him. When he told the employee, put the money in the bank, he didn't explain that it should be a commercial bank. So he I think he probably spoke to him in Afrikaans, sit die geld in die bank, and he put it in the bank, in the couch. Unfortunately, a few misunderstandings there. And I think what happened also is that President Ramaphosa underestimated the nuances of this whole debacle, and he could have handled it better. He is now in charge. If we look at what's currently happening, we're expecting a rejig of the the cabinet within the next week or two. We would have loved to see people like US Sisulu going out. I mean, who the hell wants to give 1 billion rand to an English soccer team? But the chances are more than likely that she will probably remain, because she is a powerful figure on the other side of the ANC, and he could lose a lot of votes and a lot of support from that faction in the ANC if people like herself is thrown out. Other people that everyone in the media would like to get rid of is Bheki Cele and Gwede Mantashe, but they are two of the strongest supporters and protectors of President Ramaphosa. He cannot afford to lose them. I think that one person that will be left out is probably Mr. Pravin Gordhan. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is, will the ANC be rejuvenated? Will they suddenly now become an anti-corruption fighting machine? And unfortunately, the answer to that is more than likely no. I think a lot of focus will be on trying to fight corruption. But I recently had the privilege of behind closed doors discussions with people in the police, in the National Prosecuting Authority. And unfortunately, a large portion of our police has been captured by organized crime. And therefore, I think that a lot of the corrupt people in government and also the private sector is very well protected by these syndicates within the police and within the National Prosecuting Authority. So I don't think we are going to see a nice, clean, rejuvenated ANC pretty shortly. The question, therefore, is there an alternative? And I'm sad to say at this stage, I really cannot see Mr. John Steenhuisen or Mr. Julius Malema putting up their hands as president. I think that a successful future in South Africa will probably need President Ramaphosa at the helm, at least for the next 5 years. Who's going to be the one coming after him? Well, if you talk to business, they would have had loved to have had Ronald Lamola starting to feature, but it seems that it is going to be Mr. Paul Mashatile, and of course there's also quite a few skeletons in the closet for Mr. Mashatile. So exactly where that is going to end up, we don't know. That means that by all indications, we're going to end up with a coalition government in South Africa in 2024, with the DA starting to gain quite a lot of traction again, and the ANC losing, and they will probably be the two strongest parties. The statistics at this stage do not show that the EFF will go further than 11%. Interestingly enough, a lot of the political noise that we are currently seeing is to the right-hand side of the ANC. So Herman Mashaba, Musi Maimane, all of them are actually to the right of the ANC, xenophobia, everything on that side. So it would seem that if there is breakaways from the ANC, it will more than likely not be to the EFF side. It is going to be to the side of the right. And the interesting one that we will need to look at is Action SA, and how Action SA starts to develop when they want to fight the national government. At this stage, they're pretty much still regional, and we will have to see what that means. Coalition government, South Africa is currently really bad at it. You'll see that in all of the metros. It is something that I think even from the Voortrekker dae we weren't good at. They say that if two Jews get together, they start a business. If as twee boere by mekaar kom, stig hulle af. So if there's one thing that we as South Africans only do when we're in absolute crisis mode, it is work together. We do see a lot of the smaller parties currently being the kingpins. But what is also starting to come out from the research that's being done at this stage is that the people out there is getting tired of these smaller parties messing up service delivery by jumping around, then voting on the DA side, then voting on the EFF side, then voting on the ANC side. So it might happen that we will see a significant drop-off in support for the smaller parties, and that the whole risk of kingpins fall away completely. Now, that was a pretty negative 15 minutes just on politics. But there are a few green shoots. If we are asking South Africans who would they like to see run South Africa, they will tell you, 76% of people that have been interviewed will tell you that they would love to see a coalition between the ANC and the DA. They believe that the DA is less corrupt and that the DA can manage better, but they believe that the DA doesn't listen very well. They believe that the ANC is more in touch with what is actually needed. And therefore, 76% of people in South Africa say they would like to see a coalition between those two parties. And if that were to happen, if we were able to get those parties to agree to work together, we might just be able to get a really good, really functioning future out there. Now, what are we good at in South Africa when it comes to politics? Fist fighting. I think we are one of the 5 best governments when it comes to having nice fights in parliament. I have seen that a few other countries do it a little bit better than us still. But the thing that I think we win by far is sleeping in parliament. I think that is something that no one else is able to do as good as we do in parliament. The second one, and I'm going to start moving on a little bit quicker, is the economy. What are we currently feeling in our pockets? Now, we've got limited economic growth. The Reserve Bank has just come out and said that they don't see us getting above 0.7%. Now, 0.7%, if you take that into consideration that we will have a population growth this year of 1.3, means that we're actually going to be 0.5% poorer. We currently have the same amount of money in this country that we had in 2013, and we've got 17% more people. 17% more people need to share the same amount of money. That is the big problem that we have. Then we've got Eskom, and we've all heard that Eskom is going to be with us at least for another 2 years with the levels of load shedding. I think we need to expect a level 3, level 4 as an ongoing part of this, especially if we run out of diesel again. Infrastructure is currently absolutely chaotic. Luckily for you, you can't smell me. We haven't had water for 3 days, and that's probably even worse than the Eskom. 43% of the water that is pumped from the dam to Joburg actually ends up in taps. That means 57% of water is lost along the way. The water infrastructure is crumbling, and it is going to be a bigger problem than Eskom currently is. Our railways is a problem. Infrastructure has basically just crumbled. I was in the Limpopo with the citrus farmers last year, seeing them with full refrigeration units, all their trees still full of oranges because it was impossible to get the oranges out through the KZN port. And then, of course, when they finally got it onto the ships to Russia, Russia decided to invade Ukraine, and that ships had to be diverted, and they lost their money on that as well. Spoke to a pear farmer from Tilbach, whose freight arrived in Europe 3 weeks late, and he had to pay in on all of his crates. So infrastructure is something that's of serious concern to our farmers. Unemployment, currently 37%. That means 1 out of 3 people do not have a job. In South Africa, if you've got a degree, you've got a 15% chance of not getting a job. So it is a real serious problem, and something that our government do not have a solution for. Now, interestingly enough, the biggest problem here is our education, and it is not the education system. It's funny enough, it's not government. It is the South African Democratic Teachers Union that is the big problem here. The quality of our teachers at this stage is atrocious. Some of the research shows that teachers in some of the schools teach for less than 1 hour a day. The rest of the time they're spending in their personeelkamer. There is some schools where the teachers get appointed by the principal, and they have to pay the principal a part of their salary for the opportunity to be a teacher. And the average mathematics teacher in South Africa cannot teach maths above grade 4. So that is really, really scary. If we do not sort out the South African Democratic Teachers Union, if we don't sort out the teachers in South Africa, we are not going to sort out unemployment. One of the big risks, one of the things that we are looking at in the 22nd of February budget speech is wealth taxes. We are looking at a basic income grant that President Ramaphosa is really pushing for. That's going to cost about 60 billion rand, more money that we need to get from somewhere. How are they going to get that? They can only get that really by wealth taxes. VAT, increase in VAT will probably have to stay for our NHI, which is still out there somewhere in the ether. So we're expecting capital gains taxes, estate duty taxes, donation taxes to be increased. We're looking at property taxes. A lot of farmers are concerned about expropriation. It is not in our lives something that we see as a big risk for farmers. But if we were to guess what is on this side a big risk for farmers, it could probably be the implementation of a property tax on farms, which could have a serious impact. So what poses the greatest risk to South African economic performance? It's probably the corruption, the unemployment, the government policies. We've got pretty bad policies, our load shedding, our government debt. Currently, nearly 20% of all the taxes that we earn is paid out towards interest. We're talking about 80, I think it's 87%. I've forgotten the number now for this moment, but I think 87% of government spend is towards salaries and interest. So very little that can really continue to build the economy in South Africa. So we have 7 of the 10 industries that were doing poorly in 2022. We've got the load shedding, we've got the unemployment, the infrastructure, some of them are so deep here that you could bury a giraffe in them. And then the one thing that we're probably exceptionally good at is stealing in this country. Every time that there is load shedding, the power cables get stolen. I don't know how many of you have seen the videos that's been doing the rounds as of late, where they were actually pulling out electricity cables along roads and just loading it onto buckies and everything. Here at Lanseria Airport, they did a whole overhaul and put in new lights. All of those lights have been stolen within 6 months of being put in. So that is a serious problem in Gauteng. Now, when a substation is switched off for load shedding, there is a high chance that it won't switch on because it would be stolen during the time that it is off. In our area now, if we have load shedding, we send security firms to protect our power boxes to ensure that they don't get vandalized during load shedding. That is the nature of what we are currently having to work on. To me, I think our social is currently our biggest problem because there's a total loss of social values. Corruption is normalized. The other day, I was actually on my way to a farming presentation that I was doing, and some of the people that I spoke to said to me, if you're coming through, don't worry, there's only one speed trap, but the guy takes $100. So you can go at full speed. If he pulls you off, just give him $100. And if we believe that it is fine to pay the $100 not to get the speed fine, we are part of the problem. And I think that if we really want to save South Africa, this is the trend that we need to stop, and we need to stop it as quickly as possible. I spoke to somebody yesterday who was in Joburg for the first time, and he said it is interesting for him to see how people drive in 3 lanes on a 2-lane highway. And that is just because everybody has just decided if the taxi can drive on the left, I can drive on the left as well. And currently more Mercedes and BMWs and Land Cruisers are driving in the yellow lane than taxis. So we've just decided that if others can disobey the rules, we can disobey the rules as well. We've already spoken about the education system and my belief that the South African Democratic Teachers Union should probably become part of the solution and not be part of the problem. Our gender-based violence in this country is tremendous. And then, of course, poverty and crime. A lot of the poverty, a lot of the people are actually into crime because of the fact that they do not have any other options. I mean, if you do not know where your next meal is coming from, what will you be prepared to do? And that brings us basically to a situation where if our citizens in South Africa have no hope, they are not going to have a future. And if they do not see a future for themselves, they don't care about the consequences for their deeds. End of last year, I spoke to somebody where I was trying to figure out why people were burning schools and libraries, because I mean they were getting they were basically hurting themselves. And the person said to me, if I talk and you don't hear me, I will shout. If I shout and you don't hear me, I will start throwing stones. If I throw stones and you don't hear me, I will start putting things alight. And that is, to my mind, a very, very big concern for South Africa. I don't think we are truly listening to many of the problems that we have. But during this, I would also like to say that the politicians' view of South Africa is not the reality. We are definitely not there where there's this absolute hate between the different races. My experience is completely the opposite when I travel through this country. Below the surface, we have a unity and a love for each other that runs much deeper than people will actually believe. But we need to focus on this loss of values. We need to stop the gender-based violence. We need to stop crime, corruption. I mean, it is clear from all the research that the insurance companies have done that the looting in KZN was really very, very well planned and organized, and that the police were in many a case also part of it. We've got these gentlemen and ladies that needs to find themselves in orange overalls because they've we do not do that, if we do not start showing that a disregard for law and rules do not have any implications, we are not going to get people to follow a higher ethical value. And we might find ourselves back into pictures that looks like pre-1994. And that is not a pre-1994 picture. That is taken from last year. I think we're probably one of the only countries in the world where we tell criminals where they should be having their hotspots, where they should be waiting for us to catch us. And my concern is that if we do not start doing something about the social collapse in South Africa, this will probably be all that remains of South Africa. So on the technological, legal, and environmental side, we have problems that we haven't rolled out the bandwidth quickly and fast enough. We're focusing probably on a lot of the wrong stuff. Business automation is becoming very important. I don't know how many of you have been following the chat GPT phenomena that's across the country. Chat GPT is a artificial intelligence chatbot that can answer questions better than most specialists. We need to look at business automation more than likely in the farming industry. We need to look at laws. Currently, the laws that are currently published by our government is there to cut the cake and not grow the cake. That is a clear problem that we currently have. We are not doing enough with regards to green energy. And that is going to bite us in the future, because climate change is becoming a massive issue. Where I am currently with regards to in the insurance industry, we are seeing bigger and bigger and bigger claims coming through. And we paid out more money in KZN last year than as an insurance industry than all of the premiums we've collected in KZN for the past 10 years. So this is going to be a massive problem for our farmers. It's going to be it's going to have an impact on our food security, and all of these things play together. But what is nice, and this is my job, I play in an environment where I talk to government on a regular basis. And I can say that government is starting to listen. We have more and more meetings with government. Sometimes it feels that they are listening, but they don't understand. But at least there is a change. And I think that not necessarily in the next year, because people or government will be loath to do things now that they deem could hurt them in the election. But I do think from 2025, more than likely, we will start seeing a government that that provides us with better policy. So from a PSG perspective, we do believe that 2023 and 2024 is probably still going to be quite difficult years, but the future is starting to look quite good. So the question that I always get asked is, should we now emigrate or not? I mean, this was definitely not the nicest story that I've told about South Africa. And a lot of people have said, listen, the riots, the state capture, the volatile economy, the load shedding, I need to have a plan B, and I need to provide my kids with better education. But the question is it really greener on the other side? Yes, certain things are definitely better there, but it's not nirvana. We tend to forget that there's this whole huge nuclear threat hanging over the whole of Europe. Nobody is knowing exactly what is happening there in the Ukraine-Russia war. I mean, look at that, a father bathing his two children in what is left of their house in Kiev. So this is, sorry, this is not Kiev, it's one of the other cities in the Ukraine. So this is a serious problem that Europe is facing. Mass shootings in America is currently at 5 a day. The amount of people, and a mass shooting is where 4 or more people has been shot. And there's 5 of them per day. We don't even hear about them in the US anymore. Now, people talk about the fact that the United States has an unemployment rate of less than 3%, but more than 8% of people working in the US doesn't earn enough. They do not earn a living wage. And 5% of people working in the US has 2 jobs. That means that they work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the big problem that they currently have in the US is not unemployment, but the fact that the cost of living is so high that more and more people are living on the streets in the US. People that are working in the McDonald's, working everywhere, but in the evening they go and sleep on a park bench because they cannot afford anything more. And then there's, of course, the countries where it is actually quite scary to go and visit. I recently went to visit Singapore, where you get fined $1,000 for chewing bubblegum. But when I landed there, I was asked to sign a document that said that if they find any contraband in my suitcase, they can hang me immediately. Now, coming from Joburg and not seeing my suitcase for 18 hours, I was not prepared to sign that document because I said, I do not know what's in my suitcase. And yeah, that gave a whole new meaning for detailed inspection. If we look at the cost of the Big Mac, currently South Africa is one of the 4 cheapest countries in the world to live in. And that is also shown by the cost of living, 68% cheaper Joburg than New York. Cape Town, also 68% cheaper, 61% for Durban, 71% for Bloemfontein. Apparently there is still people living in Bloemfontein, even though nothing works in Mangaung at this stage. But it is significantly cheaper to live in South Africa. So what does this mean? It means that if you are living in New York, you need to earn 4 times more than you earn in South Africa to have the same living standard. That means if you're earning a 100,000 Rand in South Africa, you need to earn 400,000 Rand in the US or in Australia to earn the same. I've been to Australia, a beautiful place, just too many Australians. There, a 3-bedroom house will cost you 11 million Rand just to have a 3-bedroom house in a suburb in the north of Perth. And then all of your neighbors will be Afrikaans speaking as well. So are people really leaving South Africa in droves? There's a lot of statistics that show that about 4,500 high net worth individuals have left over the past decade. That is true, but it's not just a South African phenomenon. It is a phenomenon of most of the developing countries, but they're also coming back. The number of South Africans returning to South Africa is significant. And what is interesting is that we are finding a new trend where people that have immigrated, their children are coming back to South Africa. So they have given up everything in South Africa, went to live a very bad or very poor lifestyle overseas. And then when their kids finish high school, the kids move back to South Africa and come and live in South Africa. This is a very interesting statistic. And it shows that from 2021 to 2022, we've been able to increase the number of taxpayers from 6.9 million to 7.4 million. And we've been able to increase the taxpayers earning more than R1 million by 60,000 people. So this shows that our taxpayers aren't leaving in the droves that we are thinking. There's actually quite a few people coming back. But if that is not good enough, let's quickly look at one of those green flags that we are seeing. One of the things that we are seeing that we believe are strong reasons to stay and are telling us that the future is going to look much better than the past and the present, if we exclude the next 2 years, because these things won't change very soon. Government is starting to listen, spoken about that already in detail. Our judicial strength, our courts continue to make exceptionally good decisions. Just to prove the independence, Justice Kuhn has also just recused himself without any pressure on him to do that from the Zuma trial, just showing that our judiciary still values their independence, still values the high moral compass that is required. Civil society in South Africa is immense outer gift for the givers. It's actually interesting that the best work currently being done to our poor and destitute farmers are being done by a Muslim society. We have a free and open media. My father was the assistant editor to the Burger when I was young, and I can tell you that free and open media wasn't something that we had before 1994. And then the fifth flag that is on the point of turning green, probably because of a lot of pressure from outside, is our National Prosecuting Authority. We are slowly but surely starting to see the screws being turned on the big wigs in the corruption campaign. And hopefully that will benefit us going forward. So when we look at the government starting to listen, the privatization, lots of talk about railway lines and everything getting privatized and getting improved. Austerity measures, we as Commerce were surprised by the austerity measures put in place by Mr. Gordon during the medium-term budget speech. So that really looks good. The judicial strength, the Zondo Commission, the constitutional courts, and the amazing constitution that we have is still things that is bright green and we believe will give us a lot of benefit. The Zuma Must Fall campaign, you can remember them, Outer, Gift of the Givers, and then, of course, the rest of our Section 9 institutions that are playing a very, very powerful role. So I really believe that Chief Justice Zondo is amazing. He has taken a lot of risks with his Zondo reports. We've got Prof. Thuli Madonsela, but not only her. We've got Dr. Zuliman and a lot of other people that are making a massive change. And as I said, our media, which has been able to lay bare the bones of a lot of the corruption. If we just look at many of the publications that we've currently had, then we will see that we know a lot more than we knew in the past. So many people are not currently emigrating anymore. We now have what they call semigration, and everybody is now moving to the Western Cape. They say the biggest old age home in the world is now currently situated between Hermanus and George. So it's also going to be interesting. And I think if we look at the amount of people moving that way, the Western Cape is on the point of surpassing KZN as the second biggest economy in South Africa. So to kind of conclude, When to emigrate? Do not emigrate because it's bad in South Africa. I can promise you it is as bad as it is in South Africa across the world. The grass is very seldom on the greener on the other side. We sê hulle altyd as die buurman se gras groener is omdat hy meer mis het. Don't leave because of better medical care. We've got probably some of the best medical care here. We still have a good education system, our private education system, and a lot of our public schools are still good. And then we've got better opportunities. You need to decide whether you want everything working perfectly well without any opportunities to make money, or whether you want the chaos that we have in South Africa. But if you really apply your mind, there is a hell of a lot of opportunities in South Africa. The only time that you should emigrate is when you get an opportunity of a lifetime from overseas. And that doesn't happen quite often. Be very careful to follow your kids. We know of a lot of people that have emigrated to New Zealand and then their kids have moved on to America or to Australia. Be very, very careful. The kids of today will be moving around a lot, and therefore you might be in a situation where you have moved after them and then they're not there anymore. If we look at possible future scenarios, and I've got another minute or two left, we believe that we are pretty much in the middle of this crossroad, and we could move into any of these areas. I do not think we are going to move into Zimbabwe, into that area, but I do not think we're going to move into the gray area as well. We're going to plod along, especially for the next 2 years, but there's a lot of other things, and unfortunately I don't have the time to go into a lot of detail. But if you look at the media this morning, one of the things that happen is that when everything is chaos, development happens. You are forced to think of new ways of doing things, and they've come out this morning with new technology that they're putting into the Eskom substations that are not available anywhere in the world. And we might actually find ourselves in 10 years' time having a better power system than the old systems of other countries because we were forced to do that. I do believe that if we can strengthen our social values, we could really get into a rainbow nation world. But I do believe that we will probably end up in a stable South Africa, but with a little bit of economic hardship. To end off, please just allow me with 2 slides, one about PSG, just telling you who we are. We've been established in 1998, in the new South Africa, built on fundamental principles of integrity, trust, and transparency, delivering a broad range of services and products locally and abroad, specialized in creating and preserving wealth. We have a vast network, 261 offices across the country, operating under the well-known PSG brand. And we've proved our worth with exceptional results and market share. This is my personal, this is not the PSG view, this is my personal view. But interestingly enough, if we go to Jeremiah 29, many of us know Jeremiah 29:11 by heart. For I know the plans I have for you, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you future and a hope. And a lot of us copy that and we say, kyk, die Here beloof vir ons voorspoed en nie teëspoed nie. But what we tend to do is we tend to ignore the part before that. And from Jeremiah 29 verses 3, the message given to the Israelites that are in exile is the following. They were seriously unhappy. Everything that they had around them was bad. They felt God has forgotten about them, and they all felt that they shouldn't be there. And God said, stop moaning, build houses and live in them, plant gardens and eat their produce, marry and have children. Seek the welfare of that city. Pray to the Lord on their behalf, for in their welfare you will find your welfare. And the question I have to ask yourself is, when last did you pray for President Ramaphosa? When last did you pray for our government? I had the privilege of a talk by one of our well-known speakers a couple of years ago, and he spoke about an event where he went with his children to the movies, and he was looking at the movie, and the kids were in awe about the movie, but he was probably 15 minutes in and still thought that it was probably one of the worst movies that he's ever seen. And then his grandson tapped him on the shoulder and said to him, Granddad, put on your 3D glasses. And the moment that he put on his 3D glasses, he could see the amazing movie that he was actually watching. My last question to you is, through what glasses are you currently looking at South Africa? Are you only looking at all of the things that are wrong? Because if you are, you're going to be very negative, and you're not going to see a future for yourself, for agriculture, and for this country. But if you've got the right 3D glasses on, you will see opportunities, chances for us as civil society, as business, as farmers, to actually make a difference, to contribute, to grab the opportunities, and also be financially extremely successful. I hope I've given you some insight. I hope I've given you some food for thought. Things are bad. Things will probably be difficult for the next 2 years. But if you've ever wanted opportunities to be successful, to make money, I think we will have no better time than now in South Africa.
Ronald, thanks a lot. Thanks for being realistic, but also leaving us with some hope. I see there's some compliments in the chat box already. Deirdre has jumped the queue a bit with a question there. I don't know if you have the chat box open there on your side.
Now, so Deirdre, your question is, if we look at the political landscape, what do you believe the impact would be if the 2024 election allowed for independents to stand for national and provincial elections? Independence is not necessarily that absolute win, because you do not find them following a strict mandate. So it could be beneficial because they will vote and they will act for the people that have elected them, but it could also go horribly wrong. So we do not think that people in South Africa will, on a municipal level, I think independence can make a difference, but on national level, I do not think, even if they are available to able to stand, don't think a lot of votes will go their direction, and those that come in, I don't think they will have that massive positive influence that people believe they will have.
Thanks a lot for that. Pete, I see your video is on. Are we going to stick to questions from Limpopo?
If you wanted to, but no, it's fine. I don't have a question.
Okay, no, good. Thank you. Do you have any Willem question from your side?
Yes, I just want to ask Ronald on the Big Mac main, what do you call it, menu? What is the rand? Where must the rand be? Because I've heard that the rand is at this stage, what is it, 17 rand, but on the Big Mac menu, it must be between 8 and 9 rand. And the question
it has moved up. The Big Mac index the January one has moved up to about 11 rand. But I mean, if we look at 11 rand to where we are currently, it would show that on the purchase power parity index, the rand is seriously undervalued. Interestingly enough, for the first time ever, we're actually also seeing inflation higher in other countries than in South Africa. So if we didn't have load shedding, if we didn't have the corruption in South Africa, the rand could probably improve by as much as 25%, and it could do it overnight. we believe that most of the bad news, and remember how markets work is they preempt bad news. So we believe that most of the bad news is already in the rand, and from here the rand can only improve. We cannot tell you when it's going to happen, but it will improve. So if you are exporter, it's probably a good time to consider locking in the rand. If you're an importer, you can run with the currency, because the risk to deteriorating significantly for a long period of time is the lowest that it's been in quite a while.
Ronald, is the Big Mac index an indication of how cheaply we are producing food in South Africa?
So the Big Mac index is what it basically does. It goes and it looks at the price of a Big Mac hamburger everywhere in the world, and it works on the principle. So the basic principle says that if I produce a Big Mac cheaper than a Big Mac in America is produced, people will ask for the Big Macs from South Africa to be sent to the US. Now, technically, it doesn't really happen, but that's the principle behind it. And currently, a Big Mac in South Africa is about half the price of a Big Mac in New York, and that's what it's saying. So it's saying that things are still produced cheaper in South Africa than anywhere else. Yes.
So we are underpaid.
Yeah, that's a debate for a whole other day. One of the concerns that we have is that the efficiency of the South African laborer is actually decreasing and not increasing. For years, we were known as the hardest workers in the world. I'm starting to think that that's probably not the case anymore.
Thank you. Last question. Anyone else? Ronald, thanks a lot. Thanks for your time. We appreciate. Like you see in the chat box, people found it very informative. We will definitely think about what you've had to say and use it in our discussions going forward. Like I said in the beginning as well, lots of times people, our members, ask us and look at us to give some guidance and what we see happening in the future, and also the way we are involved in influencing policy to the benefit of our members. It's definitely a talk that we can work with. So thanks a lot for your time and good luck with the work you're doing. Talking about PSG and the success story that it is and that you're part of it. Good luck with the future for PSG and yourself as well. Thank you very much,
Willem. Have a lovely day, all of you.